Mind over matter, overcompensating, overstatements, crookedness relating, the soul's churn in return, mental overstimulation, one word, riveting, it terrors my pilot. Streams that are promised to make seeking less.
Greetings. Hope everyone's doing well. Having a good week and all those good stuff. You are through to the Mad Poet Podcast. I am your host, Alex Mano. And I guess you could say I've been thinking, so I have a few things I just want to break down today. It might get somewhat deep. You could say somewhat deep. However, things to say. But before I get to that, I just want to acknowledge, in a sense, where I've been. Man, it's been positive, it's been great. Had me a lovely week last week, or should I say lovely weekend. And had the privilege to do a festival performance. And so, yeah, it was exciting, man. It was my first one technically. So I wanted to, I just wanted to make sure I do what I'm supposed to do of sorts and just get it done. So I was really enjoyed, just sharing with the people as I always do. So, it was positive to be there, and I like the energy and the type of people that was there. So a shout out to, or should I say salute to Spoken One is or Spoken, as they which is the organization, the name of the organization that invited me, which was responsible for the more creative poetry side of everything. So I got the chance to share with a new audience, and just another day to vent, I suppose you could say, another poetry event done by the Mad Poet. So appreciate that, appreciate that. But it's neither here nor there. Hope everybody's doing well and having yourself a positive week, etc. And I suppose, let me just, let's not beat around the bush. Let me just get into this thing and just share where my mind is at, what I really want to speak about today. And it was somewhat inspired by, I suppose you could say, a combination of different things to do with capitalism, but more specifically, my focal point will be towards objectivism. But also, I have a piece to share, of course, which I'm about to do. But I suppose I'll give more context later. But just to share the fact that, it was really inspired by reasoning, and specifically objective reasoning. And I really wanted to somewhat break down what inspired it, because I thought this was something that my audience would like to hear. So without further ado, let me just find the quote that I have today, and then lead you into it. So this is it. Reasoning with madness, as though the times have come to capture my mind, growing a mental spine, for it was the only way to tether my beckoning unwind. The existential wingspan of the mind, probing through reality like it's time to see whatever ticks like time. Mystical embracing has got my hands shaken. Tweak between the moments like they hold my triumph. They hold triumph to my resolve. Now hanging in the great terrain where the noise is prone to explode your eardrum. But within that moment, there is silence, perhaps not one that is born of conventional rationale, but the exploration of what is may be the only path to liberation. Yes, indeed. This is a piece I wrote at the beginning of the week, which is, not that long ago. But I thought it was apropos for today because of what I named it. And that will be the name of this episode, which is Emancipate Yourself. And the reason why I suppose I was inspired to choose this name is because I think, emancipation starts in the mind. And to emancipate yourself, or to stay emancipated, it cannot be accomplished or maintained without reasoning, objective reasoning, in my opinion, logic. And the somewhat distance, perhaps you could say, away from certain things, subscribing to certain realities to do with somewhat, you could say, mysticism. Overly emotional reality. Don't get me wrong. I think these are tools, or these are facets of our being that, when used right, it can enhance us for the greater good, or to be a greater self. However, I think the center of everything should always go back to reasoning, and to deviate away from that, you're somewhat subjecting yourself to a folly sort of reality that could be at your detriment of sorts. So, questions, right? Questions. And these are just things that I was just reading this piece and I was thinking about this. What is your resolve to figure what life has in store for you? I suppose this is the rabbit hole I decided to go down to somewhat, explore this whole idea that came to mind, So yes, the question is, what is your resolve to figure what life has in store for you? Were you one of the fortunate ones to have an answer to this question? Were you one of the fortunate ones to have an answer to this question from an early age? The reason why I put those two together is because I think it starts it gives you an advantage to, you know, have an idea or have these questions somewhat um, jumping around in your head from an early age, because it gives you an advantage later on in life. I say that to say I did not figure out my situation pertaining to where I was and would like to end up, and even how to work towards what I want until a later stage. I would argue that's the average person, you know, 29, 28, or maybe that's the lucky. That's luck. You know, at that age, maybe that's luck. Or maybe I'm fortunate. Again, hindsight. Hindsight. But you could also argue hindsight is somewhat subjective. Let's go deeper. The piece begin, well, I would say the piece is inspired by, yes. So let's go deeper. The piece is inspired by the Russian author Ayn Rand, which is somewhat of an alias, a pen name. She also wrote a paper on capitalism, and if you're somewhat relatable, if you know of this paper, you know that capitalism and objectivism, they go together. The part that interests me, I wanted to mention, was her breakdown of. She gave a breakdown basically, and you know, it's all to the. I would have to say these are all situations to do with objectivism and reasoning. I suppose I'm getting to the point where I think it's best I share, you know, part of. We're sort of doing a deep dive. So she says, if a man believes that the good is intrinsic in certain actions, he will not hesitate to force others to perform them. If he believes that the human benefit or injury caused by such actions is of no significance, he will regard a sea of blood as of no significance. If he believes that the beneficiaries of such actions are irrelevant, or i.e. interchangeable, he will regard wholesale slaughter as his moral duty in service of a higher good. It is the intrinsic theory of value that produces a Robespierre, a Lenin, a Stalin, or a Hitler. It is not. This is the last piece I wanted to mention. It says, if a man believes that the good is a matter of arbitrary, subjective choice, the issue of good or evil becomes, for him, subjective choice. The issue of good or evil becomes an issue of my feelings or theirs. Understanding or communication is possible to him. Reason is the only means of reason. I just want to go over this part. Reason is the only means of communication among men. And an objectively perceivable reality is their only common frame of reference. When these are invalidated, held to be irrelevant in field of morality, force becomes men's only way of dealing with one another. So that's really what I wanted to mention. Um, I suppose going back to what I'm speaking about right now, she also. I just want to jump into yes. So that was the part that inspired the piece I called "Emancipate Yourself." I called it this because it simply is an exploration of the experience pertaining to mysticism, overwhelming logic, or on a larger scale, objectivism. I say that to say it is a fine line, in my opinion. It is a fine line. I think, at least sometimes, I think for anyone, men and women, the injection of emotion is a dangerous one because it can overwhelm to the point where we throw logic and the idea of objectivism out the window. These are some of the points I try to somewhat explore, uncover, in the piece. In the piece, which is, as I always say, is an excerpt of a larger piece that I create. But I thought this quote that I read earlier is just enough to sort of share the idea of where I'm trying to go pertaining to this episode. And I hope I painted a picture so far. I'm taking time to break this down because I also want to share the notes from what I well, I made notes, but I'll get to that. As the saying goes, if you choose a path, you figure out the rest of your life, pertaining to growing, developing, and just general figuring things out. However, I think the issue, especially nowadays, is the choice. To not choose is also a choice, you see. To not choose by default, you're also making a choice. Except due to the fact that you never a reason to come to this conclusion, by default, you may also be subjecting yourself to a life of ambiguity, darkness. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Here's a few questions for you. Ever get up every day doubting yourself? Unsure about the world you live in? What about your confidence wavers? What about your self-belief? How about enthusiasm? How about enthusiasm? How much do you want to thrive? Do you even feel the need to thrive? You know, the biggest one, I would say, because it is, to me, is sort of like the light bill or the water bill, in a sense. Positive mental attitude. Where are you with your mental attitude? You know, I mention all these because I think they're important. They're important parts of an individual's makeup. However, without that decision to subscribe yourself to something that resonates with you, ergo something that defines who you are internally, as well as your form of pursuit, your choice of pursuit, something that you want to do for the rest of your life that makes you happy. And you know, that's a state of being. You risk not developing a lot of these tools, or somewhat not maintaining through the most important parts or stages that are pivotal to this thing that we call life, you know. And we're not perfect. You know, as we know, these things sway, come and go, and sway enough as it is. You know, of course, our ultimate goal is always transmutation. But that comes from the choice and the work and the applied faith somewhat, which, you know, the work. But transmutation doesn't come overnight. So what do you want for yourself? What do you want for yourself? And these are just a few thoughts that were evoked by the power of reasoning of sorts. And I thought I wouldn't be me if I didn't share with my audience, you know, some of these things that I think is of great value and deserves thought, deserves thinking about. So I hope everybody somewhat it resonates with them and they appreciate where I take this episode. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But as always, thanks so much for the support and, you know, supporting the platform. It has been a special time because of the support I've been getting from people and just sharing the platform. I would love for you to reach out. The book is out now. Poetry Event by Alex Murdoch, the Mad Poet. Ramblings of a Madman. And as you know, it's exploration of a psychological exploration of through poetry of just different sort of emotions and well, it's poetry. It's poetry really, but it's so many different facets of it, so many breakdown of it, and so many different ideals. It's a special book to me, and it speaks to where I am as a creator, you know, and it has been a journey and it has been special. So I'd love for people that, you know, have been sharing the journey with me to share this as well. So, of course, and you're through to the Mad Poet podcast. I'm the Mad Poet. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.